Get comfy. It is me yet again coming through with another episode. Um, First and foremost, welcome into the Blueprint Lounge, hosted by me, Cassie. But coming to you today, this is episode 3 of this season. This season to me is that season of becoming. And so that's what this season is called. This is episode 3. And today, I'm finally going to get into the why behind the brand, the Blueprint Company, the Sacred Blueprint Company. Sorry. Drinking coffee. What's been my favorite thing, especially because fall is here, is I've been taking, regular coffee, mix it with caramel cappuccino mix with just a splash of pumpkin spice creamer. When I tell you it's on point, it's on point. But come on in, grab a seat, and let's dive into this episode where you'll get to find out my why. And we'll talk about, we'll talk about all that, the why behind the brand. And of course, the brand for me is the Sacred Blueprint Company, right? And this honestly has probably been in the making for some time now. And it just really took root and blossomed over the last couple months. So how people always say that, when you're in that planting, where you're planting your seeds, you're tending to your garden, you're watering it, you're doing all the things that, make things blossom. And some things that blossom are good, and some things that blossom end up not lasting that long, right? So I'm saying all that because I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I've had other businesses that I've started, ran for some time, and to be honest, I abandoned them, and for different various reasons. The last business that I had was with my daughter, and it was called Nisi's Crafts and Things. And to be honest, we didn't end it per se. We're actually in the process of revamping that business, because I do feel like it's something that, we are aligned with. So again, getting back to the story of my why. So let's just say I've tried numerous of different MLM type businesses. I've tried, doing my own businesses and things like that. And throughout this season, this transformation that I've been having over the last year, it made me really dive deep into, my whys and why I wasn't as successful as I would have liked to be when I had my other businesses, right? So I've done an array of things. I've been a realtor. I've, like I said, had my art business with my daughter. I've done different MLM businesses from, places like Party Light, and there was this jewelry one, and then some other stuff. And, at that time, a lot of the reasons behind doing those things was I was looking for money. Okay? I'm gonna be honest. I was looking for money, and I was looking for quick money, or what I thought would be quick money, or, quick and enjoyable money, to make. And believe it or not, the only thing that I enjoyed out of all of those things that I used to do was the art business and part of the realtor business. And I say part of the realtor business because I honestly got into real estate not to really sell a home or to help people buy a home. I don't want to say help people buy. I just wasn't into it for the actual sales part of it. For me, because I knew my story and how impactful that move was for me, and having such the amazing realtor that I had then, I wanted to get into it for investment reasons, and then also to encourage people like me, right, that they could own a home. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of us out here that believe that we can't. And the truth of the matter is that you can. It all has to deal with, again, everybody talks about this all the time. It really deals with your mindset. But in that time, in that space with real estate, I got more enjoyment out of sitting down with a client, going over things, especially clients, like I said, that were like me, operating out of survival mode, having a dream, right? But also being told that dream was possible, right? And that's what my realtor did for me. She encouraged me. She got me into the right rooms, the right places for me to get things aligned, for me to be able to be in the place to own my home. So when I got into real estate, that's all I really wanted to do, was to sit down and talk with, clients that were like me, who had a dream but believed that dream wasn't possible, right? And I enjoyed sitting back with them, going over the numbers, giving them the real, and educating them about, the housing market and everything like that. That's where I got my enjoyment from in that business. And then with the art, I love art. I love creating. I'm a very creative being. And I'm always constantly thinking out of the box. I love creating stuff. Maybe one day I'll show you guys some of the things that we've created in the past. And honestly, I might show you some of the things that we're working on now. So with our art business, though it's not as active as it was, we still do, we do still do art. It's more of on if someone says they want something, needs something or whatever, we'll create it for them. We'll do it for them. So it's more on a consult type of situation. But we're in the process of revamping that. But I've always gotten the question as to why, and, out of all the things that I've done, you go through these trainings and stuff like that, and they're always constantly stressing to you about having that why, because that why is going to be able to lead you to the success, right? And I think a lot of times what was left out of the equation is that you can have the why, but if you still don't have the mindset, you're still not going to be as successful as you could be. I'm not saying that you won't be successful. I'm just saying that you won't be as successful as you could be. And that's where I found myself at. I found myself that my why, obvious, kids, right? Bingo. But I always felt like they weren't a strong enough why, and I started questioning that, right? But as I was questioning that, what I ended up learning was it was never them to begin with. It wasn't that they weren't a strong enough why. It was because my mindset wasn't in the best position. So when you hear people talk about mindset, you got to change your mindset. Yo, it is all true. Okay? It is all true. And it's going to take that mindset for you to sit back and really say to yourself, Are you really wanting something different, or are you just content with dreaming about wanting something different, right? And like I said, tonight I'm going to go over, my why behind this brand. I'm not going to give you the full out journey because we would probably be here all night, and I'm not going to do that. But in short, I've always been one that has lived out of survival mode, from everything from work wise to relationships, and even, my own personal relationship with self, right? And when you're activating out of survival mode, you do a lot of things that make sense for you at that time, but you're not thinking of things long-term wise, right? So getting into all of that, I knew for some time now that I had to work on my mindset and shifting that mindset. And a few years ago, I went through a bad breakup. Okay, just gonna be honest, went through a bad breakup. And during that bad breakup, which I can now say thank you, during that bad breakup, it made me get closer to God. And there was a moment where I was depressed and I was boohoo crying and all the other, stuff that you go through during a breakup, to where I decided to hit record. And ever since then, I've recorded every single conversation that I've ever had with God, regardless if it was good, bad, ugly, whatever. I did all of that. I got so close to him. I make jokes with people that, when he hears me call his name, he's probably looking at me like, what do you want now, child? Right? But that's just me. I do have a very strong relationship with God, and that's where everything really started. On top of little trickles of things throughout my life, from the life experiences. So little things that I've learned throughout life too had started shifting, but a lot of things started making sense then. And from there, with that connection with him, I started having more visions, and a lot of them would either come to me while I was asleep or while I was driving. And I got to this point where it was about sometime this year, where I said to myself that I was tired of living the life that I was living, and I was ready. And I had that conversation with him where I told him that, the old saying my mom said to me at one point in time is, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Tired of going through some of the things that I was going through, and a lot of it surrounded work and where I was working at previously. And just being so tired of playing mediocre, because I knew. Now, this part, I've been telling myself this since last year, is that I'm not meant for a mediocre life. That's not me. And so, this year, talking with him, I told him that I was ready. And in that is when everything started lining up with the visions and, really seeing and changing a lot of my mindset, getting surrounded by people who were where I wanted to be, helping me listen to people, who were living the type of lifestyle that I wanted to live, right? And to be fulfilled in. And with that, it started having me think about the blueprint, right? We hear about, mindset, changing your life, resetting, things like that, right? But I took it a step further, and I started looking at my life like a blueprint. Really realizing that the people and things that were around me, if I rolled out my life on paper. And you know, guys, when an architect brings the plans to the developer or whatever, right? It's all these different levels, different things, even to the outside. And when I had started thinking about that, I got to a place where I knew certain people didn't need to be in my life anymore. And so, you know, I started asking him to remove those that didn't need to be. So those things started shifting. I started placing people exactly where they needed to be in my life based upon the roles that they were playing. And, you know, going through that season of mapping out, you know, the blueprint of my life, you know, this is where the, you know, the title and the brand, you know, the Sacred Blueprint comes from. You know, I felt like all the conversations that I was having with God and the things that he was showing me and putting me through and testing me with and the lessons and all that were sacred to me. You know what I mean? It was sacred because this is between him and I. He is my partner for life. He will be in the center of everything it is that I do. And then it made me think about that moment where I was talking to him about my blueprint, the blueprint of my life. And that came about and I said, you know what? That's it. The Sacred Blueprint. That's when the brand came about, you know, and then behind that brand, it was like, okay, God, what am I supposed to do with this now? You know what I mean? Like, where am I supposed to go with this? And so that's when all these things started coming up from, you know, him sending me people to whisper in my ear about the things that I've had on my mind, but really didn't pay much attention to, right? So this isn't my first time of having a podcast. I've done your typical podcast where it's just all audio and that's it. And I've had 2 of them and both of them were really successful. The first one was surrounding about mental health. Just for, you know, brief context, I've worked in the mental health field for now like almost 12 years. I am not anything licensed on the clinical side, but I've worked every position you can think of when it comes to the administrative side. But in that, I created a lot of great partnerships and connections with people from the clinical side, and I learned a lot, you know, in that field. So, you know, I was just, you know, talking to him and just trying to figure out, like, what is it that I'm supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go with all this? And how is this supposed to work? And him sending me all the different people, you know, in my life, whispering in my ear about certain things. And that's how this came about me, you know, redoing a podcast. And it really was derived from, you know, the stresses of my last job, basically. A lot of the stresses, a lot of the things that I was witnessing, and all in all, I knew that that last job that I had, I kept telling God, I was like, this is going to be my last job. This is going to be my last 9 to 5, because I am just not aligned with some of the things that I've dealt with in the workspace. And so, you know, I had a friend of mine mention how I needed to start up a podcast again, you know, based upon that, talking about the experiences that people do not hear about. You know, we always hear from the clinical side of people burning out and all this, and even on the corporate ladder, you hear about all the big wigs and stuff like that being burnt out. But the one thing that I did notice is that everybody that was at the foundation, the bottom people, right? Those people who the big wigs and stuff like that says that they're the face of that company, that, you know, they're the ones that customers interact with. Those are the ones that the customers see first, right? Going through that, you know, it was brought to my attention to start up the podcast again, right? And so here I am coming through, talking about lived experiences. And it was something that God had been whispering to me for some time, but I didn't know what that looked like until he was starting to make it plain. And so then I had that, and I also had him, you know, start letting me know that I needed, you know, I've always said that I love helping people. And, you know, I've always gotten to these jobs and things like that I thought was going to be fulfilling because I was helping people. Now, mind you, I loved helping the people. I just did not like all the office politics behind the scene, especially when things don't align. So that was my major problem. So I wanted to find a way where I could still connect with people and help them on the level that I wanted to help them in. And I've had for years now, you know, therapists that I used to work with tell me all the time, oh, you should become a therapist. You should be, you know, I hear it all the time, right? And I'm honestly in school for psychology, and my goal is to finish out my bachelor's and then go for my master's. But the funny thing is I honestly don't have any interest in going the clinical route. And I was talking to God, asking him what would be the best compromise between that. And that's when coaching came up. And I feel like in this space, because I kept getting connected through social media with a lot of different coaches, life coaches and stuff like that, and watching them and all of that. And I was like, yo, that's what I want to do. You know, I have many years of experience, both work-wise and lived-in experiences, and I've been able to transform myself, let alone stand up here and coach, you know, one-on-one to, you know, members of my team and staff that I was responsible for, but, you know, also group coach. Like I loved it. You know, so in certain things, he made me realize where my calling should be. And he's given me things to add to my blueprint. And that's kind of what I'm following now. And, you know, my kids to me is still my number one anchor to my why. But it also comes down to myself. I'm the reason as well. I'm a why. And then also leaving behind a legacy. And when I speak of legacy looks different for me than it might for you. And in that, you know, leaving behind a legacy, not just for my family, my kids or whatever, it's really being able to leave a legacy for everyone that I help, everyone that I touch. I'm hoping that I leave some kind of imprint on them to where they build out their legacy. And so for me, that would even further, you know, the legacy that I'm trying to leave behind. So with all of that, you know, that's my why behind this brand. And this is one where I'm not giving up on. This is all God led, God guided. And this is my purpose. And this is my assignment. And I truly 100% believe that down to my core. And I will continue to push, and I will continue to work through things to get to, you know, serving. And that's what I'm looking forward to. You know, I'm not going to say monetary things don't matter, because they do. And I'm looking forward to reaping those rewards. But I think one of the greatest rewards that I can think of that I would love to experience is just being able to connect with people, to tell my story, to see who it might inspire. And I say this to everyone, and I've told this in plenty of people I've talked to that we all have a story to tell. And in that story, your testimony, your lessons, whatever, can really impact someone, could really change the narrative for someone, could, in that lesson that you learned, could have been the solution to a problem that they're going through at that time. So yeah, this is my why behind the brand, and it's not going anywhere. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. It's not going anywhere. I'm going to keep building. I'm going to keep pushing, even through the struggles, the challenges, all of that. I'm still going to keep going because I know this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. But that ends it as far as my why behind the brand, the Sacred Blueprint Company. So I gave you a little bit of me, and you can kind of get a feel for, the other episodes, kind of who I am. And if you continue to stay tuned, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you give me a thumbs up. But you're going to find that as time goes on, you're going to get to learn more and more about me and who I am and the community that I'm trying to build and everything, that's me. And who knows, it might connect with you and be able to help you on your journey. And that's all I can hope and pray for, right? So I am going to end this here. And I hope you guys have an amazing day and an amazing week. And, you make the most out of it. And just remember, if a mindset shift is what you're needing, if you're needing that reset, women, if you're ready to take charge again, to realign, to find your purpose, to get out of that survival mode, hit me up. I'm here, and I'm ready to assist the best way that I can. I'll leave all my info below, all the links below, so you can come and see what I'm about. But until next time, stay blessed. Love you guys.